Claire sat in her quiet kitchen, the clock ticking steadily as steam rose from her cup of tea. The night had already stretched long, and she had been ready to sink into bed when the sudden knock at the door broke the stillness. It wasn't a neighborly knock, not the soft tap of someone passing by. It was urgent, deliberate. Her heart jumped. At this hour, who could it be? She walked to the door with cautious steps, her hand hesitating on the knob before pulling it open. There stood her son, Daniel. His tall frame filled the doorway, his hair slightly messy, his cheeks flushed as though he had rushed there. Claire's surprise was immediate. He rarely came by unannounced, especially at night. His visits were usually planned, short, practical, never sudden. "Daniel?" she said, her voice catching between joy and worry. "What are you doing here this late?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he offered a nervous smile, one that reminded her of the little boy who used to hide behind his back when he brought her something from school he wasn't sure she would like. There was something behind him now, hidden from view. She noticed the tension in his shoulders, the restless way his eyes flickered, as though he was carrying more than what she could see. "Mum," he said finally, his voice low but filled with a strange energy. "I have something to tell you. Something important." Claire stepped aside, letting him in, her mind spinning through endless possibilities. Had he gotten a promotion? Was he in trouble? Was this about his future, his life, his heart? She couldn't place it, but she felt the air shift as he walked inside. The house, quiet and dimly lit, suddenly felt alive with the weight of whatever he carried. He set his jacket down, his movements quick and unsteady, then turned back to her with that same nervous half-smile. She wanted to reach out and steady him, to remind him that no matter what he had to say, she was still his mother, and her love was constant. But she held back, waiting for him to speak, sensing that whatever words were about to come would matter more than any reassurance she could give. Daniel glanced toward the kitchen table. "Can we sit?" he asked. Claire nodded, leading him back, her tea forgotten, her heart racing. They sat across from each other, the wooden table between them suddenly feeling like a stage for something far larger than their simple lives. For a moment, silence stretched. Daniel tapped his fingers against the table, then stopped abruptly, as if forcing himself to stillness. He looked up at her, his eyes shining with a mix of fear and hope. This could change everything," he said, his voice breaking slightly on the last word. Claire's breath caught. She studied his face, the earnest lines of a man still holding on to the boy she had raised. The phrase echoed in her mind, heavy with promise. Change everything. The words weren't casual, not the kind a son used lightly. They carried weight, the kind that could turn her world upside down. "What do you mean, Daniel?" she asked softly, leaning forward, trying to meet him where he was. He hesitated, his lips parting as if the words were right there, but caught in his throat. His hands slipped behind his back, and for the first time, Claire noticed he had been holding something the entire time. He pulled it forward, but kept it close to his chest, almost protectively, like it was both a treasure and a burden. "Before I show you," he said, "you have to promise you'll listen. Just listen. Don't decide how you feel right away." Claire's pulse quickened. She had no idea what could make her son speak with such urgency, but the seriousness in his tone pierced her heart. She nodded, whispering, "I promise." He exhaled, a long shaky breath, then placed what he had been holding on the table between them. Claire stared at the object, wrapped neatly in brown paper, with a simple ribbon tied around it. It wasn't large, but it looked deliberate, as though every fold of the paper had been done with care. Her fingers itched to reach for it, but she stopped herself. She looked up at Daniel instead, searching his face. His eyes were locked on her, watching every flicker of emotion that crossed her features. He was waiting for her reaction, bracing himself. "Open it," he urged softly. Claire reached for the package, her hands trembling. The paper crinkled beneath her fingers as she peeled it away, her curiosity burning brighter with each second. Inside was an envelope, sealed tightly, and beneath it, a small photograph. She froze, her eyes catching on the picture before she even touched the letter. She didn't recognize the woman at first. Warm brown eyes, a gentle smile, a softness that radiated from the glossy photo. She looked kind, approachable, the sort of person who carried warmth in her presence. Claire lifted her gaze to Daniel, confusion swirling in her mind. He leaned forward slightly, as if stepping into her unspoken question. "Her name is Emily," he said, his voice steady now, the nervousness fading into something else, something stronger. "And she's important to me." The words hit Claire in a way she didn't expect. She had worried for years about Daniel's solitude, the way he threw himself into work and rarely spoke of anyone beyond colleagues. She had feared he was closing himself off, locking away the part of life that brought love, companionship, connection. And now, sitting before her, he was sharing the key. But Claire's chest tightened too. Something about the name, Emily, sparked a flicker in her memory, faint but persistent. She didn't know why yet, but it tugged at her heart. Daniel tapped the envelope with his finger. "There's more. She wants to meet you." The words settled between them, simple but life-changing. For years, it had been just the two of them. Now, her son was asking her to step into a new chapter, one that included someone else, someone who clearly mattered to him deeply. Claire's tea sat untouched, the steam long gone, as the weight of the moment pressed down. She stared at the photograph again, her heart caught between curiosity and something she couldn't yet name. Daniel's eyes softened. "Mom, this isn't just about me. This is about us. I need you to trust me. I need you to meet her." And in that instant, Claire knew her life was no longer on the same path it had been when the night began. The quiet rhythm of her days, the stillness she had grown used to, it was all shifting. The knock at the door had opened more than just her home. It had opened a door to change, to possibility, to something unknown yet deeply powerful. She held the photograph a little tighter, her heart racing with questions, and whispered to herself, "This really could change everything." Claire's fingers trembled as she held the photograph, the warmth of the young woman's smile seeming to glow against the cool night air. She looked back at Daniel, her son's eyes steady, waiting for her to speak, to react, to understand. For a long moment she couldn't find her voice. The house felt unusually still, as though even the walls leaned in to listen. "Emily," Claire finally whispered, testing the name aloud. It sounded gentle, filled with life. She looked at Daniel again, searching his face. "She's the one." He nodded quickly, his shoulders easing as though he had carried the weight of this secret for months. "Yes, Mom. She means everything to me." His voice grew steadier with each word. "I didn't know how to tell you before. I wanted to be sure. But now, I am sure. She's the reason I've been different lately. She's changed me." Claire's chest tightened with an unexpected ache. She remembered years of watching Daniel bury himself in his work, declining invitations, brushing off questions about relationships. She had worried he was losing the chance to love and be loved. And now, here he was, speaking with the kind of certainty she had prayed for him to find. "Tell me about her," she said softly, pushing aside her own racing thoughts. Daniel's face lit up, and Claire realized she hadn't seen him glow like that in years. He leaned forward. his words spilling out quickly, like he had been holding them back for too long. She's kind, Mom. Thoughtful. She listens. She makes me feel seen in a way I didn't think was possible anymore. She laughs at the smallest things, and when she does, it feels like the world isn't so heavy. He reached for the envelope, sliding it across the table toward Claire. And she wants you to know her too. She's been asking about you since the beginning. Claire stared at the sealed letter. Something about the gesture, the careful fold, the deliberate seal felt intimate, intentional. She wasn't just being introduced to a name or a face. She was being invited into a connection, into something that had already grown roots. Why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel smiled faintly. Because she knows how much you matter to me. And she told me once, if I can't win your mother's heart, I don't deserve yours. The words landed heavily, bringing a sting to Claire's eyes. She pressed the envelope gently, resisting the urge to open it right away. She wanted to hold on to the suspense, to feel the depth of what her son was offering. She sounds special, Claire said, her tone careful, though her emotions tumbled inside her. She is, Daniel said firmly. His confidence was undeniable. I've never felt this way before, Mom. I've dated, sure, but nothing like this. She makes me want to be better. She makes me think of a future I actually want to live. Claire's mind spun. A future. Her son was speaking about forever, about commitment, about building a life with someone else. The thought should have brought her comfort, but it also stirred a strange unease. A quiet pang of loss she didn't expect. For so long, it had been just the two of them, mother and son navigating life side by side. Could she really share him now? Could she accept that his heart belonged partly to someone else? But even as those questions pressed against her, she saw the truth written on Daniel's face. He wasn't a boy anymore. He was a man who had found love, and she could either step into this new chapter with him, or risk being left behind. She lifted the letter, turning it over in her hands, then finally broke the seal. The paper unfolded easily, the handwriting flowing across the page in neat, graceful lines. Claire read the words slowly, her heart tightening with every sentence. Emily's letter was simple, heartfelt, genuine. She wrote about how much Daniel meant to her, how she admired the way he spoke about his mother, how she longed to meet the woman who had shaped him into the man he was. She didn't write with flattery or pretense. She wrote with sincerity, the kind that could only come from someone deeply in love. By the time Claire reached the end, her throat was thick, her eyes misted. She set the letter down carefully, as though it was something fragile that could shatter. She wants to meet me, Claire said again, almost to herself. Yes, Daniel replied quickly. She asked me to set it up as soon as you were ready. I didn't want to pressure you, but I think you'll like her. No, I know you will. Claire pressed her hand against the photograph once more. Emily's smile seemed to reach into her, stirring something she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't just curiosity, it was a strange pull, a sense that this meeting wasn't only about Daniel. It was about her too. Her mind flickered to the name again, Emily. The syllables tasted familiar, almost nostalgic. She couldn't place why, but she felt a stirring in her memory, as though the past was brushing lightly against the present, waiting to be remembered. Daniel broke her thoughts. Mum, this is more than just me introducing you to someone. This is me opening up my life. I've always leaned on you, and now I want you to lean on us. I want you to feel like you're gaining someone, not losing me. The words pierced her heart. He knew. He always knew how much she feared being left behind, how much she had sacrificed for him, how much of her identity had been tied to being his mother. Hearing him speak with such maturity, such care, made her both proud and vulnerable. She nodded slowly, her voice steady despite the swirl inside her. Then let's meet her. Daniel's eyes widened, relief flooding his face. You mean it? Yes, Claire said, though her heart raced. If she means this much to you, then she means something to me too. We'll meet. For the first time that night, Daniel's nervousness melted completely. He reached across the table, taking her hand, squeezing it firmly. Thank you, Mom. You don't know how much this means to me. She squeezed back, her lips curving into a soft smile. She didn't know yet what this meeting would bring, but she felt the certainty in her son's touch, the hope in his eyes. And even with the unknown pressing at the edges of her heart, she realized one truth. Her son's happiness was worth any uncertainty she might feel. The letter and photograph lay on the table, symbols of something greater than she could yet understand. Claire knew life was shifting. The quiet, predictable days she had grown accustomed to were about to open into something larger, something fuller. And as Daniel leaned back, his smile bright and unguarded, Claire felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years' anticipation. The meeting with Emily was no longer just an idea. It was a turning point waiting to happen. Claire arrived at the cafe early, her nerves buzzing beneath her calm exterior. She had chosen a small corner table, hoping the quiet space would help her steady herself before meeting Emily. The letter and photograph had been resting on her nightstand for days, and she had studied them more times than she could count. She had memorized Emily's smile, the curve of her face, the kind expression in her eyes. But no amount of studying could prepare her for the real moment, the moment that would decide everything. She sipped her coffee, her fingers drumming lightly against the cup. Every time the bell above the cafe door rang, her heart jumped. She had told herself it was just a meeting, a simple introduction, but deep down she knew it meant far more. This was Daniel's future, and by extension, hers too. Then she saw her. Emily walked in, her presence soft yet commanding. She wore a simple dress, nothing extravagant, but she carried herself with a quiet confidence that drew people's eyes. Claire froze. She felt the air shift as recognition struck her like a sudden wave. Those eyes, the warm, familiar brown eyes, were not just Emily's. They were someone else's too. Claire's breath caught. Emily's features stirred memories she thought she had buried. The shape of her smile, the tilt of her head, it was like seeing a reflection of a past she had once lived, a past tied to someone who had meant more to her than she ever admitted. Emily looked like him. For a moment, Claire's mind raced backward, years peeling away in a rush. She remembered late summer evenings, laughter under the stars, a man with kind eyes who had made her feel alive again after heartbreak. Their paths had diverged quickly, life pulling them apart before they had a chance to grow into something lasting. She had told herself to forget him, to move forward, to focus on Daniel. And she had. Until now, Emily approached the table with a smile that carried both warmth and familiarity. Mrs. Bennet? She asked gently. Claire blinked, pulling herself back to the present. She stood, her voice catching slightly. Yes, and please call me Claire. Emily extended her hand, and when Claire took it, she felt the same pull she once felt years ago with Emily's father. It was almost uncanny. The resemblance wasn't just physical, it was in her presence, her way of making the room feel lighter. I've been looking forward to this, Emily said as they sat down. Daniel talks about you all the time. He admires you so much. Claire smiled faintly, though her chest tightened. And he speaks of you, she replied. I can see you mean a great deal to him. The conversation began simply, with polite exchanges about work, family, and hobbies. Emily's laughter filled the space easily, and Claire found herself softening despite the storm inside her. The young woman was genuine, thoughtful, and attentive. Every word she spoke carried sincerity, and it was clear she cared deeply for Daniel. But beneath Claire's polite nods and practiced smiles, her mind tugged relentlessly at the past. She couldn't ignore the similarities, the cadence of Emily's voice, the spark in her laughter, even the way she leaned forward when she was truly listening. It was like sitting across from a living memory dot as Emily spoke about her childhood. Claire's suspicions grew sharper. The towns, the schools, the way she mentioned her father in passing. Claire listened carefully, piecing together fragments of a story she already knew in her bones. When Emily said her father's name, Claire's breath hitched. It was him, the man from her past, the man who had once held her heart for a brief, unforgettable time. Emily didn't notice Claire's momentary pause. She went on speaking, her words flowing with the ease of someone comfortable in her own skin. But Claire sat there, stunned, her emotions swirling. She had come here expecting to meet her son's girlfriend. Instead, she found herself staring into the face of a past love she had never fully let go of, through the daughter he had raised. Her thoughts raced. Should she tell Daniel? Should she tell Emily? Would it matter now? The past was long gone, sealed away, yet here it was, alive again in the young woman sitting across from her. It felt surreal, almost as if fate had spun a circle, bringing what was unfinished back into her life. Emily tilted her head, her kind eyes studying Claire. "Are you all right?" she asked gently. Claire forced a smile. "Yes, I'm fine, it feels like I know you already." Emily laughed lightly. "Daniel said you might feel that way. He said we're a lot alike." Claire's smile lingered, but inside she was reeling. Alike? Yes, but not in the way Daniel thought. What he couldn't know was that the woman he loved carried echoes of a story Claire had lived long ago. As the meeting went on, Claire found herself warming to Emily, not only because of her connection to Daniel, but because of the undeniable bond forming between them. Emily's sincerity was disarming. She asked about Claire's life, her work, her dreams, not just out of politeness but out of real interest. For the first time in years, Claire felt seen in a way she hadn't allowed herself to feel. They talked for hours, the cafe growing quieter as evening approached. Claire realized she wasn't just approving her son's choice. She was rediscovering parts of herself she thought had vanished. The memories of her past with Emily's father hurt, but Emily's presence soothed them, almost as if life was offering her a gentle reminder that love, in its many forms, still had a place in her life. When it was time to leave, Emily touched Claire's hand softly. "Thank you for meeting me. I know how much Daniel loves you. I hope we can spend more time together." Claire's throat tightened as she nodded. "I'd like that very much." Walking home later, the cool night air wrapped around her, carrying with it a mix of emotions she could barely name. She thought about Daniel, about Emily, about the man she had once known, and how all of it was colliding now in a way she hadn't expected. The past was no longer behind her. It was standing right in front of her, shaping the future. As Claire closed her door behind her, she pressed a hand to her chest. She had gone to the cafe to meet her son's girlfriend, but she had walked away with far more. A connection that reached across time, a reminder of who she once was, and the quiet spark of something awakening inside her. This meeting had changed everything. The weeks after the cafe meeting passed faster than Claire expected. What had started as a nervous introduction quickly became a regular part of her life. Emily visited often, sometimes with Daniel, and sometimes on her own. They shared coffee on lazy Saturday mornings, swapped stories over long dinners, and took walks through the park when the weather was kind. What surprised Claire most was how natural it all felt, how easy it was to let this young woman into her world. It didn't feel forced or awkward. It felt as if Emily had always been meant to be there. But beneath the surface of their growing bond, Claire felt a quiet shift within herself. Emily's presence had stirred something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just nostalgia for the past, or the bittersweet connection to a man she once knew. It was something deeper. For the first time since Daniel was a child, Claire felt alive again. The routines that once felt heavy now felt purposeful. The silence of her evenings was replaced by laughter and conversation. And slowly, she realized that Daniel's surprise had given her more than just a new relationship to navigate. It had given her a second chance at life. One evening, Daniel invited both of them to dinner at his apartment. It was the first time the three of them would share a meal together since the introduction. Claire spent extra time choosing her outfit, wanting to look her best, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was hope. Or maybe, deep down, it was because she wanted this night to feel special for Daniel, for Emily, and perhaps even for herself. When she arrived, the smell of roasted herbs and garlic filled the air. Daniel was in the kitchen, humming quietly as he prepared dinner, while Emily set the table with careful attention to detail. The sight warmed Claire's heart. They looked like a team, two people building a life together, step by step. "Mum," Daniel greeted, smiling as he wiped his hands on a towel. "Perfect timing. Dinner's almost ready." Emily walked over and hugged Claire gently. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. "I was hoping you'd like the wine I picked." As they sat down to eat, the conversation flowed easily. They spoke about work, childhood stories, and their hopes for the future. Daniel looked happier than Claire had seen him in years. His laughter freer, his eyes brighter. Watching him glance at Emily with such affection made Claire's heart swell with pride. He wasn't just in love, he was building something meaningful. But somewhere between the laughter and the shared memories, a quiet realization settled over Claire. She had spent years worrying about Daniel's future, about whether he would find someone who truly understood him. But now, as she watched Emily reach for his hand, and saw the unspoken language between them, she knew he had found exactly what he needed. And in helping him find that happiness, she had found something for herself too, a renewed sense of purpose and a reason to look forward again. After dinner, Daniel poured them all coffee and joined them in the living room. He sat on the edge of his seat, his hands fidgeting slightly, the same nervous habit he'd had since he was a boy. "There's something I want to say," he began, looking between them. "I don't think I ever really understood how much you both mean to me until now." Claire and Emily exchanged a curious glance. Daniel took a deep breath and continued, his voice steady but emotional. "You're the two most important people in my life. And tonight, I wanted to tell you that I'm planning to ask Emily to marry me." The room fell silent. Claire's heart thudded, but not from shock, rather from an overwhelming rush of emotion. Her son was ready to take the next step, ready to build a family of his own. Emily's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Daniel, her hand flying to her mouth. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Daniel laughed nervously. "Yes, completely. I wanted to make sure I had both of you in the same room before I did it. Because this isn't just about us. It's about all of us becoming a family." Tears blurred Claire's vision as she reached out and took her son's hand. "You have my blessing," she said softly. "And my heart. Always." Emily reached for Claire too, her voice trembling. "Thank you for accepting me, for making me feel welcome. I was so scared you might not." Claire shook her head, squeezing her hand. "I don't just accept you, Emily. I'm grateful for you. You've brought happiness back into his life. And into mine." The three of them sat there for a long while, their hands intertwined, the room filled with quiet joy. Claire thought of the journey that had brought them to this moment, The late-night knock, the photograph, the unexpected connection to the past. Every twist and turn had led them here, to this living room, to this shared promise of a future that would include them all. Later that night, as Claire walked home beneath the soft glow of the streetlights, her heart felt lighter than it had in decades. She thought about the woman she had been before that knock on the door. The one who lived quietly, cautiously, almost as if waiting for life to pass her by. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone who felt deeply again, who embraced change instead of fearing it, who looked at the future with hope instead of hesitation. Daniel's surprise had started as a simple introduction, but it had become something far greater. It had mended the quiet distance between mother and son. It had brought love and laughter back into a home that had grown too still. And it had reminded Claire that life had chapters yet to be written, chapters filled with connection, love, and new beginnings. As she stepped into her house, she paused for a moment at the door, glancing back at the night sky. A gentle breeze swept past her, cool and comforting, and she smiled. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, she wouldn't just be Daniel's mother, she would be part of something larger, something brighter. And for the first time in many years, Claire whispered a quiet truth to herself, one that wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace. This is the beginning of everything.